Bulls against the Bristol Bears. The commentator kept saying, this is a fantastic game. And all I thought was, this game sucks a little bit for me. It has none of the things that I like. And it's all about, we have to speed up the game. We have to attract new fans. First of all, what about your current fans? And then second, who are these people that are talking about the way the game should be? And the mixture of what I would call physicality and brutality, let's be blunt, and speed, and then tactics and break. And that's what makes it so special. And I feel these people that are talking about what's wrong with rugby it's like they're embarrassed about rugby almost. Whenever something good happens, you can't actually celebrate it. You have to wait if you're going to be called back 27 phases to see a fractionally possibly forward pass. Okay, let me understand. You're having people that play rugby to half-full stadiums try to tell us and dictate to us, the French, that play rugby in the most successful, most fan-centric, every game is packed, they make more money than any other country in terms of rugby. You guys with half-full stadiums are going to tell us what's best from a fan perspective. And it goes back to where we started, MBA, is I think we should remember what rugby is about. Rugby is about different shapes and sizes. It's about strength and brutality and speed and strategy. And the scrums and the line-out and the mauls are the thing that make us unique. We should start embracing them, instead of acting like we're embarrassed by it.
This is The Long Way to the Game, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome back to the second season of The Long Way to the Game. We had a bit of a hiatus over December and January. Paul had a lot of time to think about things to talk to me about, and he sent me lots of manuscripts and manifestos, and he piqued my curiosity, and we're going to talk about that a bit today. So welcome back, Paul. Hopefully it's been a fantastic start to the new year for you.
Hey, Envia, thank you. Yes, although I have to say, I feel like I have withdrawal symptoms. I missed our conversations, and I missed debating all things rugby and stuff. So I'm really happy that we're back on.
Well, like you said in your other video about Rassie, where you met Rassie, and we made a little short clip of it, and how emotional you got. You're the typical fan, and I want to almost say typical South African fan. I don't think anybody else would get that emotional meeting Steve Borthwick, for example, or Andy Farrell. I'm not sure. Maybe people can tell us if I'm wrong, but I mean, I would have felt the same way. When I met Rassie once in a press conference, I was a little intimidated. You know, it's funny. I'm older than him. I'm taller than him. But I'm not him. So I get where you're coming from. So what we're going to be doing in this series specifically is talk about the fan experience, rugby from the point of view of a fan. And what I don't like about anything in life, basically, is when people start making decisions on my behalf because they know, or they think they know what's good for me or what's better for me. And World Rugby, I think, is starting to stray into that kind of territory where they will decide what's good for us as fans or not good for us as fans. And that's when you and I started talking about things and started putting ideas together. And we're going to do this thing in two parts. First one, we're going to be talking about the rules and regulations and the way they want to speed things up that they bring into the game. And the second part, which we'll do next week, is the fan experience. One of my bugbears is Sweet Caroline. And now people don't agree with me. They say that is Loftus' spirit. But now apparently it's Perth's spirit as well, and Twickenham's spirit as well, and everybody else's spirit. So Sweet Caroline, I think, should die a quiet death. But anyway, that's enough, and that's something for another day. We're going to be talking about the Baltimore experience. You've done a lot of homework for us, but that's going to be next week. This week, we're going to be talking about, like I said, the rules and regulations. And like I said, you drew up a little bit of a manifesto for us. I don't want to call it that. It makes you sound like, you know, YouTube's going to kick me out here because I'm using the word. I'm probably going to get flagged or something. But anyway, it's just a joke. Talk to me about that thing that you sent me in broad detail, in broad strokes, basically. Tell me what the idea was, and then we'll dive into the detail.
Yeah, MV, I'll tell you what triggered it. And I guess the word fan comes from the word fanatic, and it was tied to there were two things that triggered it for me. The first was I was watching the game, you'll be happy about it, the Bulls against the Bristol Bears. Remember that was in the painful days of the Bulls for you. And I think that game ended up like, 61-44.
49, yeah.
And the commentator kept saying, this is a fantastic game. And all I thought was, this game sucks a little bit for me. It has none of the things that I like. And yes, it's high scoring and there are lots of tries, but there's no defense, there's no structure. It just didn't feel like a competition. So that was kind of one where I just thought, like, man, this commentator is really annoying me by keeping on telling me that this is a fantastic game. And that's not a fantastic game for me. To contrast that, remember in the World Cup, the game against Ireland, I think the score was 13-8, the final score, the game that we lost. But for me, it was one of the best rugby games that I watched. It was so much intensity and pressure and back and forth and physicality and everything. So that was kind of one thing. And then the second thing was, I've seen all these shows either or things about World Rugby, and it's all about we have to speed up the game, we have to attract new fans. And there was a part of me that's just getting upset because I feel like, first of all, what about your current fans? And then second, who are these people that are talking about the way the game should be? Because it feels to me like, I don't know if they watch rugby or grew up with rugby. For me, the whole thing about rugby is that physicality and the mixture of what I would call physicality and brutality, let's be blunt, and speed, and then tactics and brains. And that's what makes it so special. And I don't want it to be like rugby league or like basketball. And I feel these people that are talking about what's wrong with rugby it's like they're embarrassed about rugby almost. And they are making apologies for it. And I think we should embrace what's unique about rugby. So that was kind of it. So I got a little bit upset as a fan, and I had no one to vent to. And I thought, I don't want to be a person that just like shouts into the void or gets on social media and writes angry posts. And so I thought, well, if I was in control of rugby, what would I do to make it better for the fans? And I started writing it down. And then at some point, I sent it to you. When I started, I never intended that, but I sent it to you and said, Envia, I think we should talk about this because I'd love to know, what do other fans think? Because I don't know who these fans are that the rugby administrators are talking about. It's not the people that I talked about. I'd like to know what they think. And I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion and debate and hear where I'm misguided and wrong, and where we as fans are actually much more aligned than the administrators of the game and or the accountants of the game and or the lawyers of the game.
The first thing that comes to mind when you talk about that, the fact that they want to speed the game up. And you mentioned rugby league and basketball specifically. And I think that's a big part of the problem, especially in countries like New Zealand, I suppose Australia, England to a degree, where rugby league specifically is gaining a greater following, I suppose. And basketball, New Zealanders are playing basketball, so it's not so many injuries, it's a fast game, it's exciting and everything else. So what they're trying to do, I think, is they're trying to dilute the spirit of rugby, like you call it, and try and match up with that. So firstly, those kind of games are aimed at a younger audience, and this is something that you and I have a bit of a bugbear about. You and I are typically not born, we weren't born yesterday, as you can see from my grey beard and the likes. Why are they so fixated, do you think, on younger fans and younger fan experiences and stuff? What about the older guys like us who've been supporting the game for decades and, the ones paying the bills and making sure the lights were kept on during the tough times?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, I understand even advertisers in the US, the prime audience that they go after is because mostly the older people have the money to spend, but the prime audience they go after is that younger audience. And I understand it because you don't want to have a game that's good for another 20 years and then suddenly has zero fans. So I understand that you need a mixture. But the two problems that I have, I think the way that you bring young people into rugby is parents taking their children to rugby games, taking them to the stadium, making them watch on television. That's how I started watching rugby. I watched with my dad. Those are my memories as a child. And then the second thing that I'd say is you don't, even in business, you don't compete with other people by trying to be just like them. You have to play to your strengths and your unique capabilities. And rugby's unique strengths is this all shapes and sizes. That's number one. Like, where can you get a Cheslin Colby, an Ibn Etzebet, and an Ox and Che in any other sports team? Where can you get those physical characteristics? That's what makes our sport so unique. And I feel like we're suddenly trying to go, oh, we should just be like, literally, I watched the sevens this weekend a little bit in Australia. And sevens is okay for me to watch, but it has none of the things that make 15-man rugby compelling. And I feel like they're trying to turn rugby, 15-man rugby, into sevens or rugby league. And why are there so many less spectators watching sevens? It has all the things of speeding the game up. No scrum, tap and go, just running from everywhere, limited defense. It's just because the thrill of rugby, the thing that makes it special, is exactly those unique things. And I feel like, so I understand why you want to go after a younger audience as well. But I feel like rugby is treating it almost as if its current audience is worth nothing. And the current audience is the way to get to the young audience.
Mm.
And then secondly, rather than trying to mimic those other things, is embrace the things that are unique and play them up and advertise them better and market them better and market those aspects of rugby as a strength rather than shying away with it. It may be controversial. I'm all for player safety, but the same is true for the brutality of rugby. I'm just going to speak for myself, but I think for most rugby fans, we like the fact that it's physical and that it's hard hitting and you get those bone crunching tackles and stuff like that. And I feel like with the player safety thing, we're at risk even on that to kind of go away from that because we're being so sensitive to that. If you play rugby, like I was never the biggest kid in school. I was quite skinny. I was fast at least. But I knew that there was a chance that I was going to get injured. And I often did get injured, but I still wanted to play rugby. And I just think we have to embrace it and stop this. For me, the madness of almost the path that we're on, which is to try to take all the things that are unique about rugby and de-emphasize them and focus on things which I think are good when you talk about them theoretical, but in the real world, in most cases, I think they're window dressing.
You know, Paul, I saw a graphic the other day, and it was a graphic of a World War II bomber that returned um, after bombing raids. And it was a sort of an almost an amalgamation of where planes typically got hit. And you could clearly see it got hit here most and hit here most and hit here most. And everybody said, oh, we must strengthen the planes in those places. But there's a bias to that theory. The bias is that those planes that were hit there, there's already strong enough because the ones that didn't come back are the ones you should be looking at. Why did they not come back? Not what were the ones that made it back? What we should improve on that? What should you do to make sure that everybody comes back? And I think rugby is stepping into the same trap here, or they're falling for the same trap. Or into the same trap. They're trying to fix something that's not broken, and they're looking at it the wrong way, and they're going at it with different techniques. The first one of which we'll start discussing right now is the overemphasis on the role that TMO plays lately. Even though they speed up scrums and they speed up everything, but then it takes ages to look at the smallest, minutest little forward pass or some mistake that was made 17 phases ago and everything else. So let's talk about the refereeing and the TMO. In one word, clearer, faster, more consistent. That's what you were saying. Talk to me about your ideas behind TMO.
Well, first, let me say is that yes, the TMO is I understand why the TMO is there, but it is the most frustrating part of rugby right now for me. And if you look in comments on social media, I feel for most fans, it is more. So rugby talks about the stop-start nature, that there's not enough ball in playtime. And the thing that World Rugby control the most directly, that in my mind is causing the most of that frustration, is the TMO rule. And, I've been on here a lot, envious, saying, I don't like to criticize referees. I don't like conspiracy theory type of stuff. I don't like it when people like overly negative about people's character and stuff like that. But I'm going to I'm going to border on maybe crossing my own line there. I feel like often the TMOs are people that couldn't make it as referees, maybe, number one. And they remind me a little bit in school. And I was not a bad apple in school, but there were always kids in school that were always, juffrou, hulle praat hier agter, of hulle, like, that were kind of tattletales.
Click back out.
The,
Click back out.
the TMO for me has almost adopted a personality of like a little bit of a clickback or a tattletale. And I feel like, if I remember correctly, when the TMO was first introduced, it was to say they have to come in for instances of clear foul play or misconduct. And I just think it's gone way off that. They're coming in for little nitpicky stuff all the time. It's taking a lot of time to make decisions about things. They're slowing it down to ultra slow motion. Now, for me, rugby doesn't get played at 1/10 of the speed. It's a physical sport that's happening at high speed. And I just think the TMO, we've lost kind of the thread on it. Like it's like what its purpose was. And it, in my mind, is the single cause of fan frustration right now. One, because it slows the game down. Secondly, whenever something good happens, you can't actually celebrate it. You have to wait if you're going to be called back 27 phases to see a fractionally possibly forward pass. Then you have to review it for 27 views from 27 different angles. And then you can know, oh, I can celebrate or I can't celebrate. That's number one. So I really don't like that. I think we should go back to saying the TMO is for clear and obvious infringements. I would like to go a step further. I would say the TMO can only come in on their own for foul play. And with foul play, I don't mean a tackle slipped high or something. I mean someone punched, someone kicked, someone gouged, all of that. They can come in for that on their own to make the referee aware of that. I think that fits the player safety kind of need. But for the rest, what I would like to see is that the referee has to ask the TMO, can you take a look at this? Could you tell me if this happened? So that's the second thing I would do. So the first one is they can only come in for clear foul play. The second one is the referee needs to bring the TMO in when they're unsure or unsighted or their touch judge can't help them make a decision. And the third thing for me would be give the captains each 2 reviews. You could debate, should it be 3 or 1 or 2? I would just pick 2. So that a captain can have a review like in American football, a red flag, or in cricket where you can say, hey, I want to see if that's out or not. And if the review turns out to be correct, they get to keep the review. And if they're wrong, it goes away. Because I feel like the players on the field normally know what actually happened. It's the same as in cricket. You can look in cricket like with a run out. Before they've looked at the review on the screen, the players actually, by looking at their body language, they know if they're out or not. So if you do those 3 things, I feel like the TMO's value will be back to the original purpose. You'll have less of these nitpicky type of stuff. I don't know if you saw in the game Ireland against France this weekend, David Lowe, Elrich's dad, sent me a WhatsApp that said, hey, there was a knock-on in that second try. I had not seen it. It was clearly the tiniest of tiniest knock-ons of DuPont when he was picking the ball up behind the ruck. They didn't do it TMO. I actually think World Rugby have told their guys to let it go more because this weekend was different than the November tests. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that going by. And if okay, so a try got scored there, let the captain of England, Ireland, ask for the review and let them decide if it's important enough to use their 2 reviews for that. So that's what I would do. And then one last thing that I do is all of this bunker and the post-game reviews. One of the things that's really annoying for us as South African fans, especially, and where the conspiracy theories have come in, is this sense like the calls go against us. Now, every team thinks the calls go against them, but look at the red cards of Lewitt and
Jan
Franco
Hendrik.
Mostert and Jan Hendrik. Like, how ludicrous is it? He was convicted with no video evidence by someone just saying, oh, I believe the other person's story was more credible. Those inconsistencies drive fans nuts. And so part of it is it depends on who the review panel is, who is reviewing the incident in the bunker or on Monday. And this is not my idea, but I forgot who suggested it. And as soon as they said it, I loved it. So I would, for every major competition, so international rugby is one, the URC is one, the Champions Cup is one, have a single disciplinary committee / bunker, the same people that review all the decisions. So that at least when they make a decision, you can't go, well, that group of Irish people that we've never heard of, they decided against the South African for the Ireland person. And this group of English people decided a completely different way. It would be the same 5 people or 4 people. Put people like Nigel Owens, put the best of the best on that. Have the same people judge the decisions for the bunker and the Monday reviews, and have them explain publicly how they got to the decision. Better decisions, because you have the best people. You have the same people so they can compare it against their own decisions from a week ago. And they'll communicate it better. And I think it'll take a lot of this heat and frustration from the fans away. So that's I feel like I did go on a rant, and I feel like I'm living up to your thing. I should have worn like an old jacket and grown my beard or something.
Look like a fugitive.
So
Yeah. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. I remember 2007, France versus the All Blacks. Forward pass missed by Wayne Barnes. And All Blacks out of the World Cup. So one forward pass can have major implications, I suppose. And, if Antoine Dupont knocked it on behind the scrum, how do we know the island people would, for example, have seen that? There must be a better way maybe for the coaches, somebody to communicate and say, listen, there's something off there, I suppose. But I mean, there are instances where a forward pass can determine destiny almost, don't you think?
I agree. And to argue against myself for a second, if you look at the Rusty Plus podcast that's been on recently, they've been having a discussion around the shape of the game and the rule changes. By the way, a brilliant play by Rusty and his team at influencing world rugby without getting in trouble like he did the last time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, educating fans, and at the same time, taking pretty smart slaps at Matt Williams, I feel like. So really a good
That's
really
a good thing.
show.
We love that. Yeah.
Me too. I really like that. But in that, Felix Jones is of the opinion, he said what you said. He said at the highest level, there's too much at stake. He would rather slow the game down to make sure that the correct decisions are made. And so I would say, boy, it's hard for me to argue with Felix. He seems like a smart guy.
Yeah.
Plus, so it puts me in a difficult spot. But I would say between the captain's review and or the coach's reviewing. In American football, the person that throws the red flag is the coach normally. And if you look at in the boxes of our coaches in the games, there's always, they have at least one live feed of the game. And so many teams, I've seen Felix or someone yell down in the mic, tell the ref to check head contact or something. So all of those things could still happen. It would just mean that either a coach or the captain, when I said the captain, it's really a coach's review. They have to decide this is important enough and clear enough that we're going to use one of our 2 challenges. So I agree with your premise. You would hate for a team to lose a World Cup or some important game because of a bad decision. Frankly, it still happens today with all these TMO stuff in any case.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they had debate the number of challenges I think in the NFL, you get 3 challenges or 2. But the coaches know. They're looking on the screens. They have an analyst during the game. I can see them pointing to Rusty, showing them something on the laptop. They all have ways. They don't all have to be like Rusty with the colored lights or whatever, talking to the players. They all have ways to tell the players, to tell the captains, and they do it now. But now it's just almost like it comes across as a little bit of a whiny way. You're like, oh, ref, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. No, make it count. And if you only had two, you would use it when it really mattered.
I think something that we have to talk about is the fact that they want to speed up the game. They want to shorten the experience, but make it more worthwhile almost, more intense, I suppose. But what they're doing is they're speeding up the aspects of the game that makes rugby rugby. Hugh Griffin said this weekend, scrums make rugby union rugby. But let's speed that up. Let's speed the lineouts out. But let's take 25 minutes for the TMO, like I said. I think the priorities are wrong. If you want to make the game faster, then you have to make it faster everywhere. You can't sacrifice sort of the fiber of the game to sort of placate a different kind of part of the audience, maybe with the TMOs, for example. There has to be a better balance in that. The game itself cannot be prejudiced almost to serve this kind of certainty. Anyway, I'm struggling to find the words. Late at night, my Afrikaans is overtaking my English again.
No, I agree. And for me, it's early in the morning. So I'm the opposite of you. I am the freshest. I don't drink coffee, but I hope people don't think I'm jacked up on coffee because I'm quite animated, I feel like, in this discussion, which is because it's a fan discussion. It's the fanatic in us. I would say there are two issues that I have with one, Envia. The one is just randomly saying, speed up the game and have more ball in play. I think is a bit misguided. There are areas where we should speed up the game. I'll talk about that in a second. But the second thing is the rule or the law of unintended consequences. Like if you take the scrums away, like that's where I feel like the people doing this is for me almost as if they don't play rugby or watch rugby. What does the scrum do is it actually opens up space on the field because you have 8 forwards concentrated in one little piece. The ruck and the maul is another thing like that. I see this proposal, the proposed law change in Super Rugby, or that they're testing, and it's not a proposed, that they're testing in Super Rugby, that says once the referee says use it, the attacking team cannot put more players in the maul. Now, in my opinion, I like, within reason, mauls and rucks. There are things that I don't like. But one of the things that the maul does is it sucks in all the forwards and in some cases, some of the backs, and it actually enables open play on the sides. It's not just that you can score from the maul. I don't know the statistics, but my guess is there are often more tries scored from not the maul itself going over and scoring the try, but the maul sucking in players, and then there's more room for unstructured play at the back. And so I think that's the two issues with this. Let's take all the things that are unique to rugby away because they slow down the game. And then secondly, there are unintended consequences by depowering the scrum, having less scrums, having less mauls, whatever. And I want those things. I like watching a maul. It doesn't have to be like the maul in the 2019 World Cup where we mauled from the halfway line to the try line. I like a good maul. I like rucks. But it's what it does on the rest of the field that's important. And if you take that away, you have that suddenly rugby becomes like rugby league, where you have 15 players lined up across the field in a straight line, and there's absolutely no room for the attack to attack. And so you get these static attacks, which are boring to watch, in my opinion.
Well, Hugh Griffin explained it to me quite nicely the other day. He said, if you take a free kick, for example, they say, there would have been a scrum, but now it can't be a scrum anymore. It's now going to be a free kick. Number one, the scrum half that's of the now defending team would go fight with the referee and buy his team some time, so they have time to reset the defensive lines. The team that's now suddenly getting the free kick weren't prepared, or they weren't ready to attack. Now they have to start doing an attack. And so the kick's going to go up and it's going to go nowhere. You're going to have 15 players lining up against 15 players. That's not going to work. Whereas, like you just said, with the scrum, you've got 16 players, 8 on each side. tied up on the one end of the field, and everybody else is stretched out a bit. You do a bit of a targeted attack somewhere and you open up space. It's just the way rugby works. But anyway, we're digressing a little bit. We have to move forward. The other thing second thing you mentioned was player culture and behavior. And I mean, when you talked about this, immediately the thing that came to mind was Nick White. When Faf de Klerk tickled his mustache a couple of years ago and, performing a swan dive worthy of any ballet. That's what you were talking about. This is not soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. This is rugby.
That is the best example. You've picked the perfect example because it was so obvious. Remember how egregious it was. And I think it led to like a yellow card against Faf.
Yeah, it did.
Now, as a fan, and I would say not as a South African fan, as a rugby fan, I would have felt better if Nick White had gotten a yellow card. Because what he did was, in my mind, completely against the spirit of the game. It was basically, and I don't like that. I don't like in soccer when a player gets like a little tap on their ankle and they fall down as if their ankle and their back was broken and they're rolling around on the field for 5 minutes. And then when the ref blows play on, they get up and run and they're all good again. And the reason I brought this up is Envia. I feel like it's seeping into our game. And some of it has to do with the way we deal with these head collisions as well. But it's in other areas as well. So for me, there are two things that I really don't like. And if I was in charge of rugby for a day, by the way, if World Rugby are listening to your podcast and they're looking for someone to be in charge of World Rugby, I'm available. I'm retired. So is that the player? I would say kind of the player theatrics. And it's coming more and more, and I don't like it. So you could take the examples. Remember when Jasper Wiese head butted or nose rubbed the Italian player last year?
Eskimo kiss.
It was not a good thing. He shouldn't have done it. Let's just be clear. It was a stupid thing. He shouldn't have done it. But honestly, the way the Italian player reacted was as if Jasper had punched him in the face. And I don't like that. And look at it now in rugby. If you look for it, you'll see it. Players get the arm of the other player is high up, and they like flop their neck backwards and hold their neck and look at the ref. They stop playing sometimes, like the scrum or the maul is still ongoing, just to kind of theatrically make the point that something has happened which is not good. And I would just like them to stop it. Just in our days, that happened all the time, and we just got up and kept on playing. And I would say, so that's one part. I hate Nick White is the most egregious, but I would just say it's just more and more in our game where players are flopping or acting, or it's what makes us different from rugby. That's number one. From soccer. I really don't like it. And then the second thing I don't like is the amount of chirping to the referee on the field. The most extreme case was in that game. It was my first game with Megafoon Rugby. It was the Italy game last year in Torino, where we had talked about where the ref had seemed to have lost control. But I was sitting close enough to the field, you can't always hear it on TV. And while the play was active, it was constantly, it sounded like, like when you drive from Johannesburg to Cape Town and you have your small children in the car behind you and they're constantly, he's touching me, he's touching my food. The game was like that. Ref, it's a knock on ref. He's offside, he's offside. And in that game, the ref didn't do anything. In some other games, I've seen the ref go to the players and say, you have to stop. Or like for me, it's just let the ref call the game. Let the captain talk to the ref if there's something that they want to bring to their attention within reason. Now, on the Rugby podcast, just so that I represent what our team, I want to always represent global fan needs, but make sure I'm not going too much against our South African coaches. Rugby said, hey, on our team, we don't have a single captain, actually. Like we have a captain for the scrum and a captain for the lineout. I'd be okay with that. If it's even in the lineouts or whatever, talk to the ref. But this constant chirping after the play and during the play is just annoying for me. And it must drive the referees nuts and defocus them from their game. I wouldn't be able to concentrate. I would like to see the referees penalize more of those players, not just for when they actually yell or curse at the ref, but just in general. It's just penalize them and say, stop.
Yeah.
I just let me do my job. And if I've missed something, use your captain's or coach's challenge, or have the captain come and talk to me once the play is over.
Yeah, well,
And it just feels like soccer is like creeping into our game. And I don't know, it's always what's made us different is that we're not this, I don't know, fake outrage game.
fake outrage, that's a perfect word. I heard the other day that Dick White said in an interview recently that he was quite sorry about that. He felt bad afterwards.
He actually, like, he went up in my regard of him, because I saw that interview. It was before one of these, either British, and remember he got pulled back for the British and Irish Lions, or maybe it was when he came for the test at Ellis Park where they beat us. And he just said up front, someone asked him about it, and he just said, look, in retrospect, that was not my proudest moment, and I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
And I felt like he owned up to that. He fronted up to that. And I respected him for that. Not at the moment when he did it. I would have loved if he had gotten a yellow card. I do not want to be an advocate for violence on the field. But if Bucky's Bueto was still playing, I would have talked to Bucky's to say if he could.
You would have had a reason to fall down.
some retribution for that time. That's just it's.
Well, it can be done. I mean, we saw, when was it? Last year, one of those November tests, the referee gave a penalty against Marnie for strong language, remember? Because Marnie was shouting at some of the opposing players, and he gave I think it was Wales, gave them a penalty. So it can be done.
It was the Ireland game.
Was it
and
Ireland?
So there are two parts there. I'm a little bit, because of what I've just said, I don't want people to do that. I don't like it when, like, who was the All Black guy that in this last year, like, he'd be like in the face of people that had knocked the ball on and stuff. I just don't like that. I don't think it's good sportsmanship. And so it applies.
Tupuvai, the lock.
Tupuvai,
Yeah.
yes. And so for me, it was okay. I feel like the ref mainly penalized Mani, and I don't know if he gave him a yellow card, but because Ireland had like 110 yellow cards and penalties, and the ref just needed something to make it look like he was not one-sided. But I would like them to, like, for me, you can be really aggressive, really physical, all of those stuff without having, I don't know what it is. It's just like, it's not part of the core game for me.
Let's talk about the next one. Number 3, the stop-start rhythm. Speed the game up when it makes sense, or where it makes sense. And you're saying the advantages are being let go too long. But I mean, if you let the advantage, if you don't let it go, then you're going to go to a scrum. Then that's now supposedly slowing the game down. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, in many cases, advantages are not scrums; they're penalties, actually. So true. I feel like sometimes we're just playing the advantage rule too long. We're playing it like 27 phases, and there's two downsides to that. First of all, if something breaks down, you're going to bring the game all the way back to a different place on the field. It's going to feel like it was a different decade almost when you're going back there. And so I feel the side benefit and I don't know what the rules should be, like how long do you run advantage, but that players, when teams have advantage, will look to strike quickly. The Boks are actually a little bit that way if you look at them. And I heard a stat, but now I don't have it, so I don't want to quote it and get it wrong. The Boks, when they get advantage within one or two phases, almost in most cases, go for a score. They'll do like the cross kick, or they'll do a break, and I feel like that's what you want to encourage. Once you know you have advantage, take advantage of it as fast as you can. The second thing I don't know that I never hear anyone talk about it. When you're at the end of a game that's a close game, and a team gets to play a 3-minute advantage, and then it gets called back, the clock doesn't get reset. So you've actually run 3 minutes off the clock, even if you haven't done anything. And so I feel like they should reset the clock to the point where the error was and happened. That's how American football works. I don't want to use American football is the most start-stop game in the world. So I don't want to use it. But one thing that they do have is they stop the clock when the thing happens, and then they roll it back if they figure out that something happened earlier. And for advantages, I would do that. So I feel like just having these long advantages, and then if the team doesn't score, they go all the way back. That's a bit of it just destroys for me the rhythm of the play. So have an advantage, have some limit on it, force the teams to be aggressive then, to run their strike moves. And if you're not going to do that, at least be open to move the clock backwards so that you can't run down 3 minutes of the clock playing an advantage. Because if, let's say, if I wasn't playing the advantage, I would have kicked at goal. So now by the time it kick at goal, 3 more minutes have elapsed.
Yeah.
So that for me is the thing on advantages. I like the advantage rule, all of that. I would just make it a little bit shorter.
I see the thing, they call it now a free play. So when you get a advantage for a penalty, you can do whatever you want to because you're going to come back and get the penalty anyway. They call it a free play. Which is, I mean, if I was the attacking team and I said, oh, I'm going nowhere, I would just knock the ball on so that it gets called back anyway.
That would be another way. I just would like to see them it be quicker and run your strike play then. Like is try to score because it is a free play. You know, it's like in cricket, you get the free hit, is go for it right there. Make the kick pass, is do the triple skip pass to the side, whatever. Just go for it and not the Irish way of we're going to run 27 phases, but actually not move forward.
Can I zoom out a little bit here? You keep talking about American football, NFL, and I'm going to go back to that. You said it's the most stop-start game in the world. It's also one of the most popular games in the world. They don't mind stopping the game. They don't mind extending the experience because it adds to the drama, it adds to the tension. So what does NFL know that rugby doesn't know? Why? What? You know, there's something there. Shouldn't rugby learn some lessons from not the game, but the experience? If you want to talk about what they're doing, they're not concerned about speeding it up, as far as I know. They just want to make it an enjoyable thing.
I would say, I feel like you've set me up perfectly. I'm going to answer it in the NFL context, but I first want to quote a French referee, which is the one and only time in my life that I'm going to quote a French referee to support my point. In the last week, I saw an article, and I think you had seen it too, but we didn't talk about it before this call, where a ex-French referee commented on these new rules being trialed in Super Rugby.
Matthew Reynolds.
And I loved his answer. So he said, okay, let me understand. You're having people that play rugby to half full stadiums try to tell us and dictate to us, the French, that play rugby in the most successful, most fan-centric, every game is packed. They make more money than any other country in terms of rugby. You guys with half full stadiums are going to tell us what's best for a fan from a fan perspective. And I just thought, man, that's the best argument I've ever heard. I could make all the arguments why they're misguided. His argument is correct. Look at French rugby. French rugby actually like the scrum. They actually have made the rule, which we can maybe talk about later if we talk about the scrum, that you have to put the ball in straight in the scrum because they want it to be a contest. And French rugby is sold out. Ask Hugh Griffith. It's the most successful, most fanatic, most whatever. So the NFL, that's the thing. The NFL is start-stop. And I don't think in a given season, I forget how many teams there are in the NFL. They play 17 preseason, 17 regular season games, and then the playoffs. I do not think there has been an NFL game in the last 10 years that has not been sold out for all teams. And if you say, why is that? It's because they lean into what their sport is. Their sport is not a flowing game. It's a game of very fast, very brief, high impact plays. And there's an element of their game which is stats and strategy and play calling. And the fans are all kind of into that. So they lean into it. And then the last thing is it comes a little bit to your advantage thing. They have very well-defined clock management rules. So they stop the clock. So the game is actually never shorter. The games go very long. The Super Bowl, which was last night. So an NFL game is 4 quarters of 15 minutes each. But the duration of the game with halftime was over 3 hours, I think.
Yes.
So think about that if you're thinking ball in play.
Mm.
But there is not like a thing where someone can run the clock down by resetting the scrum 4 times. The clock is off. And then when the ball gets snapped, the clock gets turned on. And as soon as the ball is on the ground, the clock gets stopped again. So you're getting the full 1 hour of playtime in the game. So the ball in play, in one way with them, you can either look at it to say it's less than 30%. If you think of the game took 3 hours, I'm putting halftime in there, so it's a little bit,
and
it's not
the
accurate.
show, halftime show.
So you could look at it that way, is the ball in play is very low, or you could look at it a different way that says the ball in play is 100%. Because the clock only starts the moment the ball is snapped and as soon as it's dropped. So if you map that to rugby, which is something that I feel like we should consider. So I'm going to just digress. I'm a fan of these things, of the shot clock and the kick club clock and the line out. It annoys me that the players are walking to the line out, even though the rule has been changed and there's a time limit, no one enforces it. When a line out is called, say you have 30 seconds and then the ball has to be in. It will just naturally speed up the game. Those are annoying, not the fact that there's a scrum. The fact that there's a scrum for me is not annoying. It's exciting for me. Like I talked to you about the Irish game, how excited I was about the scrums or 5-meter scrum. The scrum is not the annoying thing, and it's fundamental to rugby. The fact is that the players walk slowly to the scrum, and then they're there, and then they have set it, and then they have to reset it, and then they set it and reset it. And all the time the clock is running. It's eating into my game time. That I get. Just stop the clock. Like right now, if you looked in the World Cup game against England, I was in the stadium. I was busy having a heart attack. There was 15 minutes left or 4. I forget which of the scrums it was. And that scrum got reset 4 times. And in that reset, so the scrum actually didn't happen and the Springboks were behind and like 2 minutes went off the clock. That is annoying for me. I'd like to stop that in rugby because the scrum is not resetting by accident there. It's really skilled people milking the clock. But if you said the clock is stopped and it starts once the scrum half puts the ball in the scrum, once the scrum is actually underway, it would stop that behavior, I think. I think it would stop that unnecessary. But even if it didn't stop it, then at least I'd still get the full play time. Does that make sense? I wouldn't be
I like
losing
it.
2 minutes.
No, I agree. I like that idea.
And
Perfect.
so for me, I'm with you. Like I feel when people say, the reason I'm upset when people say we have to speed the game up is what they mean is we should have less scrums and less mauls and less lineouts. And for me, that's nonsense. That's the core of rugby. I want those things. I want scrums and mauls and lineouts. That's what makes the game unique. And it's also where tries get scored from. More tries get scored from lineouts that don't end up in mauls, but actually end in backline play. The lineout causes backline tries to get scored. But what I do want to speed the game up is all those nonsense stuff like we're going to walk 7 minutes to the line out. Then the ref is going to have to call the other team because they're all still standing in a huddle. Is just say you have 30 seconds. If you don't put the ball in, it goes to the other team. You'll see that problem will go away. And now I feel like I really am in rant mode. Is what annoys me is all these people on the sideline that are coming onto the field all the time.
Yeah.
The trainers and the coaches and the water bottle guys, and they're talking to the ref, and get those people off the field and let the players play. And if you're injured, come off the field. I just think those are the ways that, in my mind, are annoying to the fans. And then if you sped that up by just having strict clocks, like, just like the conversion clock,
Yeah.
and borrow a little bit from the NFL to stop the clock until the ball is actually in play.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. Why don't you just move on a bit, because we're stretching this one a little bit. You said you protect
I'm sorry, it's all on me.
No, don't apologize. I love this conversation. Protect the offensive nature of the game. The 2 points that are standing out here for me, and I saw it this weekend in the sevens, believe it or not. I think against Fiji, the Blitzbox held up the ball, a brilliant try-saving tackle. But then Fiji got a 5-meter scrum, like it was in the old days in the 15-man game. And Fiji scored. Nowadays, in 15-man, ball is held up. It's a goal line dropout. It's a travesty, never mind a goal line dropout. I don't like that at all. That's the first thing. The second thing is the deliberate knockdowns. When you're trying to intercept a ball and you knock it down, it's going to be interpreted as a deliberate knockdown, and it's going to become a yellow card. I mean, there's an incentive. Brian Abana and John de Villiers, they were brilliant at interceptions. But so what if one or two of them didn't come off? Was it intentional? Was it deliberate? No, it wasn't. It was a mistimed, whatever the point may be. You could clearly see if it was intentional, just slapping it down for the sake of slapping it down. A last gasp final effort to get the ball not to go to the opposing player and prevent a try from being scored, that kind of a thing. Those are the two ones that stand out for me. What piece of thinking behind that?
I agree with you, Envy. I think we talk about make the game more exciting, make it more attacking and stuff. And so there are just things, the 5-meter scrum that becomes this goal line dropout, for me, I'm just going to say it's the stupidest law change I've ever seen. Like, why would you disincent the attacking team there? And I think the reason is they're worried about like repetitive 5-meter scrums. And the Springboks are their own worst enemies here with what they did in Ireland. Remember where they took like 8 scrums in a row, 5 meters out. But I just think you want to reward the attacking team there to go. And if they get held up, is give a 5-meter scrum. That's for me what I'd like to see clearly there. And then I would just say, what is more exciting in a game of rugby than a 5-meter scrum?
Yeah.
Like, everything is on the line there. It is the core of rugby, the spirit of rugby. And whether the scrum is going to push over or get pushed back, or it's going to go to the back line because all the forwards are sucked in there, either is exciting. So that's just for me a case where whoever made that rule change, I feel like they didn't play rugby, they don't like rugby, they don't watch rugby, or I don't know what was going on in their head. And then the deliberate knockdown for me is the same thing. I kind of missed that rule because I was out of South Africa and didn't watch rugby. And so when I came back and I saw it, it's just, oh my goodness, how many times in rugby as a schoolboy did I go for an interception and sometimes it came off and sometimes I just missed it, or it just didn't stick in my hand, and now I'm going to get a yellow card for that? It just makes no sense. I would say for an extreme case where someone is like taking the ball with their palm forward and slapping it, consider a yellow card. I'd be fine with the penalty, and I'd be fine in some cases with that. It's just a rugby play, and just let it go. It's part of the game. It turns defense into offense. By going for it, the player is taking a risk, which means that it's easier for the other team to score as well. So I just think there's like a whole bunch of unintended consequences. I really don't. I don't like that rule at all. And to see then a team go down to 14 players because of it is ludicrous for me.
No, I agree. We talked about, deliberate marginal forward pass calls, going to the DMO and checking every move. That, I think I agree with you. Let's not talk about that too much. But what you're saying about the breakdown as well, there's so much confusion about the breakdown. Where's the gate now? Where should you enter? And when can you take the ball? The player's looking at the ball, looking at the ref. Can I go for this? Can I go for this? And at that speed,
Yeah.
that slows the game down, kind of a thing. Make it clear and obvious. Again, that's kind of a golden rule almost here. If you make it obvious, you make it clear, no ambiguity, then it's easy.
That's what I meant there, right? I like the breakdown. I like mauls. I like rucks. But it's so confusing for the spectator. I feel like it's a crapshoot, basically. You have no idea who's going to
It
get the
depends on the
penalty.
referee as
Someone's
well.
going to get a penalty. And then I feel like if this was a business, the way people talk about it in business, you would never accept it. And you listen to rugby players that are commentating saying, in every ruck and maul, the referee can blow their whistle for at least 20 different things. Now, that for me should be a big alarm bell for World Rugby. And instead of doing other silly changes to speed, fix that, make the rules simpler, clearer, whatever, so that it's not like a random toss up, which is annoying and frustrating and confusing for fans and for the players. It's ridiculous that a player has to say, can I pick it up, ref? Can I not pick it up? Like why is it? And so I wish World Rugby on this Russie Plus podcast, Jakub Piper had a pretty strong thing about how the scrums got better when someone, I think a New Zealander, broke it into like 4 phases. And I think you can now see it like, when they do the set, engage, whatever. He said, and once they did that, everything became better and simpler. It became easier to ref, became easier for the players. It actually addressed the player safety thing. But they simplified it and said a scrum has 4 phases that work together, and this is what happens in each one. And I think someone has to do a little bit of work on the rucks especially, but the mauls as well. And just clarify the rules so that it's clearer and that it's not like in every one you're guessing and saying, I don't know what happened there, or I don't understand, because in the previous one, it went the other way.
No, and the truck and trailer and, all those little funny, weird things. I mean, the maul is actually legalized obstruction if you think about it. So the rules have to be clearer than ever, I suppose. Let's talk about the scrums now. That's your last point. I mean, this whole conversation has actually started by you and me talking about the scrums. And actually, we're all talking in our little WhatsApp group about scrums and all kinds of things. And one of the most important things, I think, in World Rugby that we've seen in the last couple of months, and you mentioned it earlier, was the fact that France has now decided to put the ball in straight in the scrum. It has to become a contest. And you, Griffin, pointed out some statistics that the teams in winning the most of the opponent's ball is now the French teams, and the teams losing the most of their own ball is also the French teams, because of this new rule, which means the scrums actually work. It's no longer just a restart. It's actually becoming a contest again. So for me, the very first thing is don't put the ball under the 8th-man seat and then expect it to be a contest. You are actually, even though you're not depowering the scrum, you are almost making the scrum irrelevant, if I can call it that, by doing that.
Yeah, I there's not more that for me, it's just one of the things that make no sense to me about World Rugby. You don't have to make a new law. You don't have to trial laws. It is an existing law that you have to put the ball in straight. And then secondly, in the charter of rugby, one of the 3 main principles is all key aspects of the game have to be a fair contest. So why are we not refereeing this? Like, why is it not just put it in straight? Like, think of the Springboks. They most likely will have some cases where they lose some scrums, but I would rather see that. I want the contest of the scrum. And then secondly, I just say in general on the scrums, this depowered the scrum. It just drives me nuts. One, it is a fundamental part of rugby. Secondly, it plays into the premise of all shapes and sizes. If you think of in the scrum, you have like 3 different shapes and sizes between the locks and the front row and the back row. And then the power comes from the whole unit working together. Like the Springboks, in my mind, I believe, yes, their individual players are good, but the reason they're good are years and years of effort of making the cohesion of that scrum better and their technique and as soon as they have that, then you say, okay, no, we have to take that away from them. That makes absolutely no sense. Every other team should figure out how to get their scrums better. And so I would like to never hear the conversation again about depower the scrum. I want to embrace the scrum. I want teams to step up and get better at the scrum. And I don't want the ref, when there is a clear penalty in the scrum. Now, these days, this is what's happening. There's a clear penalty. The front row has already collapsed, and so there's a greater risk of injury. But they don't blow the whistle, and they see if the team that's on the back foot can get the ball out of the scrum. There's a point where you have to just stop that and blow the whistle. That's what the laws are. And it goes back to where we started, MV, is I think we should remember what rugby is about. Rugby is about different shapes and sizes. It's about strength and brutality and speed and strategy. And the scrums and the line out and the mauls are the thing that make us unique. We should start embracing them, instead of acting like we're embarrassed by it.
Well, talking about scrums now, for me, scrums is one of the areas of rugby specifically where you talk about it's a crapshoot with the referee blowing this, refereeing the scrums itself. You know, who's scrumming at an angle, who's walking around. I mean, we saw the game France versus Ireland. Many times I thought that Ireland should get this penalty or France should get this penalty. Or the Sharks versus the Stormers. This should be a Sharks or a Stormers penalty, and it goes to the other team. Again, there's almost no consistency in the rules. I like the idea of having a camera right above the scrums, for example. One of those little cameras, or not a drone, but ones that they run on lines there. So you can see, from above, you can clearly see Andrew Porter at number 1. He's scrumming in, clearly. But you can't see it from the side. So, and that's what I'm getting at. Again, this is too much left to the referee's interpretation. And even some of the commentators on TV who were hookers and props in their day are not always sure what's going on when the referee either blows or doesn't blow. I mean, that to me, you've got the rules. Forget about putting it straight. Get the adjudication of the scrum, whether it's done properly, get that done right. Get these referees up to your standard that they should be, because I think that's a big part of the problem.
I agree. Now, Jaco Piper, in that podcast, he said the scrum has gotten a lot better and is much easier for a good referee to referee. And I actually agree with him. I think the problem is there are not enough good referees, like not enough excellent referees. We talked about it once. The athletes that make it to the top level, there's something that they have that separates them from the pack. And I just don't think there's a pool of enough world-class referees. And so I think Jaco feels like the law changes have made it easier to referee it, but he kind of hinted that there are not enough referees that are at the top level to referee, and that's why you get the inconsistent interpretations. Russie once, I heard, had what I thought was a really good idea, which was to have a dedicated scrum referee that comes on just for the scrums. And now if you go back to the NFL again, NFL on the field has, I forget how many, but they have 7 or 8 officials on the field. And some of them look just at specific things. They're not reffing the whole game and all the things that are happening. They're looking for a certain set of stuff. And it might be that for the scrum, if we want to keep the scrum and we're concerned by the thing, because I agree with you. Sometimes I'm like, why on earth would the dominant scrum, in this case, collapse the scrum? Like, ref, why would you assume they would scrum in or whatever? They're completely dominant. But so one is maybe look at the rules, look at better training for the referees, which I assume World Rugby are always doing, and consider having for that speciality a speciality referee, even if it's just on the TV, like the TMO, a scrum TMO that's watching both sides and the top view and is talking to the referee.
No, that makes sense to me. There's so many ways they can actually make it better quite easily. Technology is there and everything, but they're almost using the technology for the wrong stuff, like you just rightly said. I agree with you. Anyway, thank you. That was a very enlightening and long conversation. I enjoyed it. And next time we're going to be talking about the fan experience, like we said. You're going to tell us about Baltimore, why they're going to play in Baltimore, what to expect there, Why wasn't it Twickenham? And what do we as fans, the old toppies, the old men shouting at clouds, like Harry calls us, what we would like to see in rugby going forward? Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Envia. I enjoyed it. Apparently, I am more agitated about this than I'd like to admit. And the one thing that I would say, I am hoping the people that are watching it, one, that they enjoyed it, but that they'll get in the comments and tell us where we're wrong, where I'm wrong, where they agree, where they're not, or what are other things from a fan perspective they'd like us to talk about. I just think this is a good topic for the fans to kind of have their voice heard.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I'm looking forward to that. Leave a message. Let us know. Are we smoking our socks? Are we onto something? What's the plan? So I'm looking forward to this new series. As Paul, as usual, what's the word? Ons het 'n hond uit 'n bos uit gepraat. It's an Afrikanism for you. I don't know if that's the right word there. Anyway, thanks, Paul. Looking forward to next time.
Okay, Envia, thank you.